The real truth about the Nigerian economy, giant of Africa or giant illusion. Welcome to Dr. Dan's channel, where we dissect complex global issues with data-driven analysis. For decades, Nigeria has been hailed as the giant of Africa. It's a title that evokes images of power, potential, and continental leadership. With a population exceeding 220 million people, it is by far the most populous nation on the continent and home to 1 in every 6 sub-Saharan Africans. Its economy, the largest in Africa by nominal GDP, is a sprawling, dynamic entity, and its cultural influence, from Nollywood films to Afrobeats music, is felt across the globe. On paper, Nigeria has all the ingredients for a global success story. Yet beneath this veneer of immense potential lies a troubling and persistent reality. This brings us to one of the most important economic questions of the 21st century. How does a country with such vast natural resources, immense human capital, and the largest population in Africa remain trapped in a state of chronic economic distress? Let's break down these assets. Nigeria is Africa's largest oil producer, with reserves estimated at over 37 billion barrels. It possesses the continent's largest natural gas reserves. Beyond hydrocarbons, it has significant deposits of coal, iron ore, and zinc, along with vast tracts of arable land. This is a nation endowed with staggering natural wealth. Then there is its human capital. With a median age of just 18, Nigeria has one of the youngest populations in the world. This isn't just a demographic statistic. It represents a wellspring of energy, innovation, and ambition. The global success of the Nigerian diaspora in medicine, technology, arts, and academia is a testament to the talent embedded in its people. This demographic profile should be yielding a massive dividend, powering a consumer market and a workforce that could reshape the continent. But instead, the country grapples with staggering unemployment and underemployment, particularly among its youth. The economic distress is not abstract. It's felt daily in rampant inflation that has, in recent years, soared past 30%, eroding savings and purchasing power for millions. Nigeria is often called the giant of Africa. But giants are measured not by size alone. They are measured by stability, productivity, and opportunity. On these metrics, the giant falters. Economic stability has been elusive, with the nation's fortunes tethered to volatile global oil prices, creating punishing boom and bust cycles. Productivity is hampered by a severe infrastructure deficit, from an epileptic power grid to congested ports and poorly maintained roads. And opportunity, the most crucial element, remains scarce for the majority. Access to quality education and healthcare is limited, and pathways to formal employment are narrow. To truly understand the Nigerian economy today, we must look beyond the sensational headlines of corruption scandals or the optimistic slogans of political campaigns. We must move beyond the surface-level politics that dominate the conversation. Instead, we must examine the intricate systems at play. We need to trace the historical roots of its current structure, understand the incentives that drive decisions for individuals and institutions alike, and soberly assess the long-term consequences of decades of policy choices. This is a journey into the machinery of an economy, to see how its gears turn and why they so often grind to a halt. But let me be clear, this is not a story of failure alone. To label Nigeria as a failed state or a basket case is to miss the most fascinating and crucial part of its reality. It is a story of profound and deeply embedded paradox. It is the paradox of a nation rich in oil, yet plagued by fuel shortages and poor in developmental outcomes. A country that exports crude oil but spends billions importing refined petroleum products, a direct consequence of neglected domestic refining capacity. This single fact encapsulates a core dysfunction, a failure to add value to its own resources, leaving it exposed and dependent. It is the paradox of a population overflowing with talent, yet starved of opportunity. Millions of bright, educated, and ambitious young people enter the job market each year with nowhere to go. This immense human potential, instead of being harnessed for national development, is often forced to seek validation abroad or languish in the informal sector, its full capabilities untapped. And perhaps the most telling paradox of all, Nigeria is a country that survives, and in many ways thrives, not because of the state, but in spite of it. The informal economy, which accounts for over half of the nation's GDP, is a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of its people. Citizens provide their own electricity with generators, their own security through private guards, and their own water with boreholes. This is the story of a population that has learned to build a life and an economy in the vacuum left by official governance. To understand this complex reality, we must go back in time. We need to explore how the discovery of oil in the 1950s fundamentally rewired the nation's economic and political DNA, creating a structure that persists to this day. Let's begin at the root. The Great Paradox: resource wealth and mass poverty. This is a story that has defined Nigeria for over half a century. It's a narrative of immense potential shadowed by profound disappointment. To understand the nation's present challenges and future prospects, we must first grasp this central contradiction. Nigeria sits on some of the world's largest proven oil reserves, the 10th largest, to be precise, with over 37 billion barrels of crude oil. For decades, it has been a heavyweight in the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, its Bonny Light crude apprised benchmark on the global market. This natural endowment has generated hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue, a sum that should, in theory, be enough to build a prosperous, modern nation. Yet, it has one of the highest poverty rates on Earth. Despite the colossal oil revenues, more than 80 million Nigerians live in extreme poverty, struggling to survive on less than $2 a day. The nation's vast wealth flows past the majority of its citizens, creating a landscape of stark contrasts. Gleaming corporate headquarters in Lagos and Abuja tower over communities that lack basic sanitation, reliable electricity, and clean drinking water. This contradiction is not accidental. It is not the result of mere misfortune or a simple lack of resources. It is structural. The economic and political systems were fundamentally re-engineered in the wake of the oil boom. The state's primary function shifted from fostering broad-based economic activity to controlling and distributing centrally collected oil rents. This created a powerful incentive structure that rewarded political connection over economic production, a system that persists to this day. But it wasn't always this way. Before oil became the dominant force, Nigeria was not a wealthy nation by global standards, but it was a highly productive one. Agriculture was the undisputed backbone of the economy. It was the primary source of employment, foreign exchange, and government revenue. The North, with its vast savanna, exported groundnuts at a global scale, famously forming giant pyramids of bagged nuts and kano that were a symbol of regional prosperity. The West, with its fertile soil and favorable climate, financed its own development, including free primary education and the first television station in Africa, through the export of cocoa. And the East dominated global palm oil production. It was so successful, in fact, that delegations from countries like Malaysia, which now lead the industry, once came to Nigeria's research institutes to learn best practices and acquire higher-yielding seedlings. The economy was diversified, not by grand design, but by necessity and regional specialization. A vibrant ecosystem of small-scale manufacturing, trade, and craftsmanship thrived alongside agriculture. People worked. Labor was the key to survival and success. Regions produced. Under the federal structure of the time, each region controlled a significant portion of the revenue generated within its borders, creating a direct link between local productivity and public welfare. And crucially, value was created locally. From the farm to the port, a chain of processing, logistics, and trade generated employment and distributed wealth across the population. Then, in the late 1950s, commercial quantities of oil were discovered in the Niger Delta. And as the first barrels began to flow in the years after independence, a new economic logic began to take hold. The oil price shock of 1973, which quadrupled prices overnight, turned this steady flow into a torrent of unimaginable wealth, and with it, everything changed. The productive, agriculture-based economy was about to be eclipsed, and the very foundations of the Nigerian state were about to be remade. The black gold curse oil transformed Nigeria from a production economy into a rent economy. Revenue no longer depended on millions of citizens producing goods and services. It depended on a single commodity, extracted by a few companies, paid for in foreign currency, and controlled by the state. This altered incentives fundamentally. When governments earn money from citizens, they must serve them. When governments earn money from oil, they can ignore them. Politics became the fastest path to wealth. Production became optional. Patronage replaced performance. And when oil prices rose, Nigeria appeared rich. When oil prices fell, Nigeria collapsed. This volatility would haunt every institution, especially the currency. The collapse of the Naira. It might seem like a distant memory, almost a myth, but there was indeed a time when the Nigerian Naira was stronger than the US dollar. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, you could exchange $1 for about 60 kobo. This wasn't just a statistic, it was a symbol of national pride and perceived economic strength. Nigerian students abroad, professionals, and traders operated on the global stage with a currency that commanded respect. The purchasing power of the average Nigerian was significantly higher, and the country was seen as a rising economic power in Africa. But this strength, as it turned out, was built on a fragile foundation. So, what went wrong? It's a common misconception to attribute the decline to a sudden national laziness or a lack of ambition. The reality is far more structural. That era ended not because Nigeria became lazy, but because the currency was never backed by a diversified base of productive exports. It was propped up almost exclusively by a single commodity, crude oil. This is a classic case of what economists call Dutch disease. The massive influx of foreign currency from oil exports made the Naira artificially strong. This strength, paradoxically, crippled other vital sectors. It became cheaper to import food than to grow it, and cheaper to import finished goods than to manufacture them. Agriculture, once the backbone of the economy, withered. The burgeoning manufacturing sector stalled. The Naira's value was an illusion, tied not to the ingenuity and productivity of its people, but to the volatile price of a single resource on the world market. And then, the anchor gave way. The global oil glut of the 1980s caused a catastrophic crash in prices. When oil prices fell, the illusion ended. Nigeria's foreign exchange earnings plummeted, and the structural weakness of the economy was laid bare. The country was suddenly faced with a harsh reality. It was consuming far more than it was producing, and the primary source of its foreign currency was drying up. The logical economic response would have been to allow the Naira to devalue, to find its true market level. This would have made imports more expensive, encouraging local production, and made Nigerian exports cheaper and more competitive. It would have been a painful but necessary adjustment. But that was not the path chosen. Instead of allowing gradual adjustment, successive governments chose denial. The idea of a strong Naira had become intertwined with national dignity. Devaluation was seen not as an economic tool, but as a national failure. This led to a series of disastrous policy decisions aimed at defending an indefensible exchange rate. Exchange rates were fixed artificially. The central bank would declare an official rate, say 22 Naira to the dollar, even when the market reality screamed that it was worth 80 or 100 or more. To manage the immense demand for dollars at this fake price, a complex and opaque system of control was created. Multiple exchange windows were created. There was a rate for pilgrims, a rate for students, a rate for government officials, and a rate for manufacturers. And then there was the real rate, the one determined by supply and demand on the streets, the parallel, or black market. This multi-tiered system was not just confusing, it was a recipe for corruption. Suddenly, the most profitable business in Nigeria wasn't building things or creating services. Access to dollars became more valuable than innovation. Why invest in a factory, deal with poor infrastructure, and hire workers when you could simply get an allocation of dollars at the official rate of 22 naira and sell them on the parallel market for 80 naira, making a risk-free fortune overnight? A new economy emerged, not one of factories and ideas, but one of arbitrage. This is the practice of exploiting price differences between markets. The entire economic focus shifted from production to rent-seeking. Those with access to power, the politically connected, the well-heeled, made fortunes by exploiting these exchange rate gaps. They weren't creating value, they were simply taxing the system, siphoning off the nation's scarce foreign reserves for personal gain. This created a new class of billionaires, while legitimate businesses starved for the foreign exchange needed to import raw materials and machinery. And who paid for this grand illusion? Everyone else. Those without access paid the price through inflation. Because while a lucky few got cheap dollars, every importer of essential goods, from medicine to food to spare parts, had to source their currency from the expensive parallel market. That higher cost was passed directly to the consumer. The price of bread, transport, and rent climbed relentlessly, eroding the savings and salaries of ordinary Nigerians. For decades, this dam of artificial rates held, leaking and cracking, but holding nonetheless. But no country can defy economic gravity forever. By the time reality could no longer be postponed, the naira collapsed violently. The eventual floating of the currency wasn't a gentle adjustment. It was a catastrophic shock to the system, as decades of suppressed devaluation happened all at once. And when a currency collapses, it destroys more than just purchasing power. It destroys trust. Trust in institutions, trust in the government, trust in the future. It breaks the fundamental social contract that the money in your pocket today will be worth something similar tomorrow. When this trust evaporates, a dangerous psychology takes hold. Prices rise not because goods change or because of genuine supply shortages, but because tomorrow is feared. A seller who accepts naira today worries that by tomorrow, that naira will be worth less. So they raise their price now to protect themselves from the future. The buyer, fearing the price will be even higher tomorrow, rushes to buy today. This cycle of fear becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, driving hyperinflation. This fear now defines daily life. It dictates every financial decision, from a family buying groceries to a business planning an investment. It is the invisible, crushing weight of economic instability, a direct consequence of decades of avoiding hard truths. The story of the naira is not just about exchange rates. It's about the devastating cost of choosing illusion over reality. Fuel subsidy, the most expensive illusion. For decades, Nigeria subsidized petrol. On paper, it was social protection. In practice, it was a massive wealth transfer. Subsidies rewarded smugglers, import cartels, and phantom companies. They drained public finances while delivering little benefit to the poor. At its peak, the subsidy consumed nearly all government revenue. When it was finally removed, the shock was brutal. Fuel prices surged. Transport costs exploded. Inflation followed. But here is the deeper problem. Nigeria imports the fuel it consumes. An oil-producing country unable to refine its own oil is economically vulnerable by design. Until refining capacity is reliable and competitive, fuel costs will remain a national pressure point. Electricity, the economy's invisible tax. Nigeria's power crisis is not an inconvenience. It is an economic tax on everything. Businesses generate their own power. Households generate their own power. Schools, hospitals, factories, all generate their own power. This redundancy is massively inefficient. It raises costs, kills competitiveness, and locks the economy into low productivity. Stable electricity is not a luxury. It is the foundation of modern growth. Without it, industrialization is impossible. Debt without development. Nigeria has borrowed extensively. Debt itself is not the problem. Unproductive debt is. Loans meant to build growth-generating infrastructure often fail to generate returns. Debt servicing consumes revenue. Social investment shrinks. Future flexibility disappears. When a nation borrows to survive rather than to grow, it mortgages tomorrow. Import dependency and the hollow economy. Nigeria imports far more than it exports. This creates permanent demand for foreign currency, while supply remains limited. It also destroys local industry. Why invest in manufacturing when imports undercut local producers? Why process raw materials when exporting them raw is easier? The result is a consumption-driven economy without a production base. This is unsustainable. The Japa phenomenon, when talent leaves Nigeria's most valuable export today, is its people. Doctors, engineers, technologists, academics. They leave not because they dislike Nigeria, but because opportunity is constrained. Remittances help families survive. They do not build systems. When talent exits faster than it can be replaced, growth stalls. The informal economy. Survival, not prosperity. Nigeria survives because of its informal economy. Markets move vast sums. Entrepreneurship thrives in spite of regulation. But informality cannot fund infrastructure. It cannot scale productivity. And it cannot provide security. The people are resilient. The system is not. Institutional corruption. When the system itself fails. Corruption in Nigeria is not incidental. It is embedded. Budgets are padded. Projects exist on paper. Accountability is weak. This erodes trust. And without trust, no society can sustain growth. Inflation and the cost of survival. Inflation is not a statistic. It is hunger. When wages stagnate and prices rise, households shrink consumption. Nutrition declines. Health worsens. Social stability erodes. This is how poverty reproduces itself. The Lagos tech exception. Amid collapse, something remarkable has emerged. Nigeria's tech sector has grown not because of the state, but because it bypassed it. Digital services scale without infrastructure. Global markets provide demand. Merit replaces patronage. This proves a critical truth. The problem is not Nigerian talent. It is Nigerian systems. Ports, logistics, and hidden costs. Inefficient ports increase prices across the economy. Delays, extortion, and congestion function as hidden taxes. Until logistics are efficient, Nigeria cannot compete globally. Dangote, symptom and solution. The Dangote refinery represents both hope and risk. It demonstrates what private capital can achieve where the state failed. But it also reveals a dangerous reality. When one individual becomes critical infrastructure, systemic fragility increases. Nigeria needs many Dangotes, not one. Taxation without services. Nigeria has a revenue problem, but also a deep legitimacy problem. People resist taxes because essential services are absent. Tax reform without governance reform deepens resentment. Demography, the final countdown. Nigeria's population is growing faster than its economy. This is the most serious risk of all. Without jobs, education, and productivity, population growth becomes destabilizing. Demography can be a dividend or a disaster. The outcome depends on policy and time. Time is running out. Final verdict: collapse or rebirth. Nigeria is not doomed, but it is at a crossroads. The oil model is finished. The rent economy is exhausted. The old illusions no longer work. What remains is the people. If institutions reform, infrastructure improves, and productivity rises, Nigeria can still become a global force. If not, size alone will not save it. The giant will remain awake, but unable to stand. If you found value in this analysis, subscribe to Dr. Dan's channel. Like this video so it reaches others who care about understanding development deeply. And share it with someone who believes Nigeria's story is still being written. Because it is. Stay curious, stay informed, and I'll see you next time.